so that when I'm writing about the threats of war, or when I'm writing about, for example, the state of what was then called Palestine in 1919, and the decisions that the British made then, you're reading a story about Palestine in a very far distant day. But you're also reading a story where the writer is saying, this is at the root of what we're seeing there today. And that's, I mean, to my mind, that's one of the real joys of historical fiction, is that it enables me to look at something that is off there and different, and yet at the same time I'm talking about us and our time, and just gives me a way of looking at it in a slightly skewed mirror. Yeah.
Back to your first question. Are Mary,
we've got the 2 mics, and that'd be great. Thank you.
are Mary and Sherlock ever passionate? And is she going to have a baby?
Yes. Probably not. It's very difficult writing about a relationship in that way when you are writing in the voice of a woman in her 80s or 90s who has a very strong sense of her own privacy. So that you have to allow scenes to read between the lines. The fact that he brushes her hair, one of the real steamy scenes in a Laurie King novel. And a scene where the two of them are sitting in an oversized chair, and he's fiddling with her fingers. It's the problem of writing revealing scenes is a tricky one. I think it really threw people when I had written several of the Russells, and I then wrote a book called A Darker Place, which has a chapter that involved bondage. and I think a lot of people were rather taken aback by those duct tape references. How did I come to be familiar with England? I have family there. My husband was an Anglo-Indian with a British passport, and so he owned a house in Oxford, which I now own. I have 3 of my 4 stepchildren are living in Britain, so it's more or less my second home. I know Oxford quite well, although I've never been to university there. I've been in and out of many of the colleges. Dinner at High Table in Trinity College was a true experience. The snuff that they pass around in the senior commons following the dinner was, I will admit, I did not indulge. But yeah, it's, I go over there regularly, and when I'm writing a book set in a certain area, I make sure to really wander around there, so that last summer, when I was finishing up various bits of God of the Hive, I needed to have a clearer image of the Lake District, because although I'd been there before, it wasn't really fresh in my mind. So I went back there in September and knocked around the various areas I was writing about and saw the kinds of vegetation in the stone walls, and the fact that it always is raining. No, we had one nice afternoon. That kind of thing I think is really important when you're writing a book that setting is vital to the story. If you're just writing a story that can be set anywhere, then you can kind of play free and easy with the setting. But I find it really good to go to a place and smell the air and eat the food. Also makes a great tax write-off.
I come from England and know the Sussex Downs, that area. My family lived it, so I just want to say you did get it right.
The lady said that she comes from Sussex, and I did get it right, so thank you.
I have a trivial question. We read The Beekeeper's Apprentice in our mystery book this month in honor of your visit here. And one of the questions I had, which is a really trivial question, so forgive me, is you have these characters, Mr. and Mrs. Barker, who own the manor house, and they have 17 dogs. And I wondered if that was deliberate to call them the barkers.
The question is, I have a scene in one of the early books with a group of dog-owning aristocrats named Barker. Yeah, I think occasionally one's allowed to play that kind of really silly joke. I try not to indulge it too often, but yes, I do. There are no trivial questions. Other comments? Come on, don't go all Canadian on me. Get in the back.
Do you start with a big picture concept and then work from there, or do the characters more or less drive the direction of the story?
Do I start with the big concept, or do I ride the characters into the story? Yes, I think both. I generally have a sense of where I want to go with the novel. I know that I want it to be dark or slightly humorous, or what kind of taste I want it to have, as it were. But I don't really know the details of the story. Sometimes I will know the final scene, as it were. Sometimes I'll have a very clear idea where I want that story to go. But for the most part, I am looking at the characters spreading out. And it's a very organic process. So I will start from a seed, know vaguely where I want them to go, and then follow them as they go. I don't do outlines, but I do have certain things in mind. So that with this book, for example, The God of the Hive, I knew that I wanted the characters to be separated and going out in different directions. And yet all of them are working towards a solution of the puzzle. And it's in a certain point. They all have a different understanding of it, but they're working together towards a solution, even though they're off in different directions, and one is in the Lake District, and one is in Orkney, and one is in Amsterdam. It's the key to my mind is just keeping attention on the intent, so that to slowly bring them together, both in understanding and physically, was the process I was working towards in the book.
Will you do another Kate Martinelli book?
Will I do another Kate Martinelli?
Yeah, and what inspired you to make her a lesbian?
A two-part question. Is there another Kate, and why is she gay? There probably will be at least one or two more Kate Martinelli books. I don't like leaving things unfinished, and I think those are unfinished. There's such a long stretch between books there that she's going to be ready to retire sort of any day now. So I have to move it on a bit.